Hey, y'all, welcome back to a Monday, August 19th, 2024 edition here on the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. We've got a pod divided, the Tennessee and UGA college football show here with Pella University of North Georgia alumni Matt Green, where we talk all things Vols, Georgia, and college football as a whole. On today's episode, we do our SEC East plus Oklahoma season preview. Part one, we'll do the West and Texas on a Wednesday night show. I understand that the divisions are gone, but not on this very program. We're not doing it just yet, and it also just helps with the organizational structure of this very program. We talked the Vols' hot recruiting streak continuing with David Sanders all entering the boat, and then a big flip from Rome, Georgia, with Harmon from Bama to Tennessee as well. The linebacker, 4-star out of Rome, and then why we're buying Florida, Mizzou, and Vols stock, and then selling some South Carolina, Kentucky, and Oklahoma stock going into the 2024 college football season. All that and more coming up next here on today's edition of the Chase Thomas Podcast. Don't forget, folks, if you have not already done so, and you are a subscriber to this show on YouTube, youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast. Thank you for being a subscriber and watching us. If you want to watch this program, you can do so each and every day on the YouTube channel, as we're well over 2,000 subscribers now and growing more and more each and every day. So if you prefer to watch the show, you can do that. Thumbs up, comments, subscription, all that good stuff helps this show continue to grow and helps other people find this show on the video format. You can also listen to this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or however you get your podcasts. You can leave this show a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or however you get your podcasts, because you guessed it, you can help other people find this very show and help this show continue to grow. So if you like this program and you're a daily listener and you have not already done so, it would be a great help if you could take care of that today. That'd be awesome. You can also get in touch with me and the show at chasethomaspodcast@gmail.com. Check out our homepage, chasethomaspodcast.com, for all the information about this very show and everything we got going on each and every day here on the pod, and information about me and the show and past episodes and all that good stuff. So without further ado, Uncle Darren, let's go.
The Chase Thomas Podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ, down there in Decatur, Georgia. My good friend and fellow University of North Georgia alumni, Matt Green, is here. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. It is good to be back with you, talking ball like we do. Bravos, I see you repping the Bravos over there. They got the win out in LA this weekend. Yeah. So shout out to the Braves. But yeah, man, how's it been? How you doing over there?
I mean, it's been a great recruiting weekend. My wife and I went to go see Twisters finally tonight. That was good. Have you seen it? Did you go see it in theaters?
I have not. Is it still in theaters?
Yeah.
Seems like one that's might be worth seeing in theaters.
It's a good one in theaters. I would highly recommend
and all that.
Yeah, no, it was a good time. But no, it was a fun movie. It was it was a good. It's not really, I guess, a reboot, but it doesn't really feel like a reboot. I don't know, but obviously different actors. But Glenn Powell's good. The girl from Crawdad Sings is good. No, it's a good time. It's a good way to spend a couple hours.
That's what people, I think, have figured out. Like, people don't want to reboot. The reboot stuff is just so. I mean, even this just kind of come up with a new movie about tornadoes. Like, why does it have to be affiliated with it at all? You know, but obviously we know how Hollywood works.
You know, they want that merchandise, but like just do a totally different story, right? Like you can do a modern version.
They want the name recognition that you already have, but so I think they learned from Top Gun. It's like Top Gun Maverick, not a remake, just kind of like, oh, let's revisit that world that you guys liked so much, and now we're in the future. So you kind of like associate with it, but maybe not remake it. I guess that's why people love the prequels and everything like that.
Well, Glenn Powell in both of those movies.
And what was the other one I named?
Top Gun 2.
Oh yeah, he's in the yeah, exactly. That dude's at everything these days. He's I saw the rom-com he was in too. It was
Hitman.
It's as good as that's what it was. That was actually a pretty good one as far as rom-coms go.
He's like I was telling my wife when we were walking out, where I was like, he's gonna be fine. Obviously, he's having a star moment. He was also really good in Everybody Wants Some, the Richard Linklater movie from a few years back, which I like. Linklater is my
he's gonna be fine.
He's gonna be fine. But what I'm saying
it.
is like what I was saying to my wife was just that like he's like he's in the wrong era, where if he's born or if he rises in the early 2000s, late 90s, he's the biggest star in Hollywood. He's just kind of in that weird era where like movies are just not as big as they used to be, but he has all the tools to be that next like big. He's on this
heater
right now.
It might still be the biggest star in Hollywood. It just isn't hit the same weight that it did 20 years ago. Yeah, I could see that. Now there's some YouTuber that has 15 million followers that I've never heard of.
Like it just doesn't. It's just harder. Like I think for these guys, it's just I don't know. That's just my take. But like the Netflix movie you're talking about, like where it's a great movie, but it's like it went straight to Netflix, right? Like that's not a theater movie. That's just straight streaming.
Yeah, I think there was something specifically about that movie and like behind the scenes of like how it was supposed to be a big theater release, and I think they lost a bunch of money because it went straight to Netflix or something. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not a movie expert by any means.
No. But you're also not a recruiting expert anymore down there in the state of Georgia, where things have shifted, my friend. Tennessee now up to number 6 in the recruiting rankings for the 2025 class. David Sanders, 5-star, number 3 overall player, number 2 overall player, depending on where you look. Number 1 offensive tackle, no matter what, out of Charlotte, commits to the Vols. And then, just for good measure, because Tennessee just was like, let's just keep this fire going. Why not? Let's just do Flipadelphia. Flipadelphia. Jaden Harmon out of Rome, flipping him too. 4-star linebacker on all surfaces. He comes into the boat from Alabama. So not only does Tennessee beat out the Ohio States and the big dogs for David Sanders for their left tackle of the future, they also just go in a position of need where they got Christian Gass, 4-star kid out of Georgia. They bring in 2 4-star linebackers out of the state of Georgia, two really good top 130 linebackers now in this class, with William Inge coming in late in the cycle, but obviously a huge get there. But Tennessee, the recruiting heater continues. They're flying drones now out of the stadium. I know you saw that with the Go Vols and all that maybe will get debuted this fall. I don't know. The winning and just the Rocky Top rolling, Matt Green. It's pretty wild to see. Tight end U sneaking up on the Dogs with the post Bowers, Darnell Washington there with Desan Brame and Jack Van Dorselaer, and then this 3-man unit here, and Ethan Davis coming out of Collins Hill having a great fall camp. The winning, Travis Smith Jr. down there in Westlake had bonkers numbers for the Westlake Lions on Friday night. 2 TDs, 200 yards receiving. He looks like an absolute dude. Another win over Georgia there for the Vols. But I don't know, Matt Green. How's Georgia Nation taking this rise from Tennessee here and this all-time heater that they're on in this 2025 class?
I wasn't expecting this heat coming right out of the gate. First, are you sure that David Sanders is committed to Tennessee? I'm not sure if he's not still thanking another family member during his speech. Longest speech I've ever had to sit through for a commitment.
What a hater. It's his moment. It was great for him. What do you mean?
It was over the top. It was over the top.
Wow.
It's like, hey, I call it like I see it. I sat through Isaiah Wilson's whatever private school's Christmas pageant, whatever that was, for 30 minutes before he committed to Georgia back in 2017, 2018, probably 2017. But no, that was just, that speech just kept going. I just wanted to hit the Dave Chappelle, the wrap it up button. Let's go. Let's get the commitment going here.
You were just mad that the Dogs were not one of the real finalists here. Like technically they were on the list, but that's what that really was. You were just annoyed that you were ready to get on with it because you knew he wasn't going to pick the Dogs, and you were hoping.
That went on for way too long. No. And I happened to be scrolling Twitter at like 1:13 p.m. and I was like, oh, dude's committing at 1:15. So that was really the only reason I was watching it. Because, yeah, like you said, Georgia had a hat on the table, but it didn't really seem like they were a contender there. But, yeah, Tennessee's definitely, creating some buzz on the recruiting trail. But let's not get it twisted here. Georgia's still sitting up here. There's still the 5th ranked class in the conference. Georgia's up there at number 4 overall. You got Auburn and LSU and Alabama all up there. So Tennessee's definitely. I'd be excited if I was a Tennessee fan. But let's pump the brakes up on Rocky Top.
There's no reason to pump the brakes. Because this is
you guys have learned nothing. Celebrating recruiting rankings before the season starts. What is happening
here's the difference: is they're stacking up wins, 20 wins in the last 2 years. You have Nico coming into the fold. You have the number 1 player in 2 of the last 3 classes. Now you have the number 3 player. Like with this run of Nico, David Sanders, and Faison Brandon in 3 straight cycles, is pretty wild. I mean, you're loaded up now on the offensive line over the next 2 classes. In this past class, you probably have some future starters here. You're kind of loaded at tight end. You're loaded at linebacker. You've been loaded on the defensive line. You have the best defensive line in the country. ESPN just rated your edge rusher as the number 1 player in the country going into this year. It looks like you have an unlimited supply of QB succession options post Nico. You're just in a really, really good spot all across the board. I mean, even areas of weakness where you're starting to recruit a little bit better. I think they're getting better and better at corner. Safety, bring in Shady Hayward from Toombs County. He's going to be a fun player in the next couple of years. But they're on this heater. But it's also the combination where we've seen programs get hot in the recruiting trail, but it's not in the wins. Like Tennessee's also winning a lot of football games. So it's the combination of Tennessee's hot on the recruiting trail, but also, I mean, we're going to talk about Tennessee on our SEC preview here, part 1. I mean, their over-under is 9.5. Like they could have the number 1 player taken in the draft right here. Nico could be projected to go number 1 overall this time next year, depending on how this year goes. So, I mean, it's the combination of winning all over the place. I don't know if you saw Tennessee baseball win the national championship in college baseball this past summer. So it's just it's infectious. Winning is infectious, Matt Green. You know this. Oh wait, you don't. Georgia sports stops in like what, January?
Hey, Georgia's won a bunch more natties than Tennessee in all sports. We don't need to get into that right now. But if I was a Tennessee fan, I'd be really excited about the direction. But I mean, counting on seniors and juniors and high schoolers, like so much can change on the recruiting trail just forever. But also in this NIL era, like who knows, at the last minute somebody throws a guy more money and he decides to go wherever. Tennessee might be the program throwing more money to those guys these days because they obviously are one of the better teams set up in the NIL era. But that actually leads me to the dog bites pretty well because Georgia, you look at what Georgia's been the last few years, Georgia hasn't really relied on freshmen. Like it's nice to get these they're getting number 1, number 2 ranked recruiting classes and not really expecting anyone to contribute year 1. And I feel like Tennessee fans over here talking about, recruits they've landed and like how big that's going to be for the program. It's like at this point of what, the powerhouses like Alabama were. And like, I remember talking recruiting with my Alabama buddy when I used to work at the golf course and him tell me about these guys they got starting this year. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I know. I look at the recruiting rankings. I know all of your players. We get it. This is what it is every year. So with Georgia, it's like there's just not one recruit that just it's like, oh, if this guy pans out, oh man, this could be something huge. And I feel like that's where Tennessee fans are, and maybe rightly so. When it comes to Nico, Tennessee fans aren't the only ones that are hyping up his ability, but it is just one guy, and so it's like just can one recruit, and obviously James Pierce. This is a drastically improved roster for them what it was a few years ago. But it still feels like Tennessee's relying on that one mega recruit. And I don't know. What do you say to that?
I don't think they're stacked. I mean, you look at this year, they're only going to start one true freshman, and he might not even start. Big Carter, 4-star star out of Chattanooga, but that's just by injury issues because Jordan Thomas was slated to start there at star, and he's out for the year. He got hurt in fall camp, so it might be Christian Harrison, the son of Rodney Harrison, who's a redshirt sophomore.
But in terms of like landing a David Sanders like this weekend, like I think most Tennessee fans are like, okay, this guy needs to be starting in 2025.
Well, I mean, I think that's realistic, but I also think linemen are a little bit different. I mean, Caden Proctor started right out of the gate for Alabama. Georgia's had
some.
Georgia might have
Thomas.
a starter at right tackle who's a true freshman, right? What's his name? The kid he's
this
the kid
year
out of South Carolina. Yeah. What is his name?
Xavier Truss, I think, is projected to be the right tackle right now.
Yeah, but there's
Ernest
the other
Green
kid.
was a redshirt freshman who started a year ago. But I mean, Andrew Thomas that started as a true freshman. Those guys can happen. Those guys come along. But
that's what I'm saying. The number 3 player altogether, Monroe Freeling. That's who I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. He's definitely in contention to start. Yeah. But yeah, as a sophomore. But yeah, I think that's what you're seeing more at Georgia. It's like Georgia's coming into 2024 with a pretty loaded roster. And so I went back to obviously 2023 wasn't a national championship team. So I went back to 2021 and 2022. Like both of those teams, both of those years, Georgia's a preseason top 5 team with a loaded roster. And if they get nothing from freshmen those years, they probably have a pretty damn good team. But those years you saw Brock Bowers, you saw Ladd McConkey, a redshirt freshman, I believe. You saw A.D. Mitchell, another true freshman in 2021. And now all of a sudden, Georgia's that dynamic offense to go with their stacked defense, right? And 2022 was a loaded team. And then all of a sudden, Malachi Starks and Mykel Williams emerge as just 2 of the best players on the defense as true freshmen. So I'm looking at Georgia in 2024, kind of the same way. I don't think Georgia really needs a freshman to be a national champion, quite frankly. But then you look at what they have coming back, and obviously they lost 3 starters in the defensive backfield a year ago, and you brought in 2 5-stars. The number 1 player in the country overall, according to some people, Ellis Robinson, and KJ Bolden at safety. If either of these guys is able to make a Malachi Starks impact, that's just something that's going to set this team off.
I mean, I think you're going to see some of these guys start, and I think that's going to. I think it's positional, where I think there are some freak tackles who can start right away. They're just big enough because part of his size, growing into the position, the weight room, off-season work, part of it is that they could get in earlier. A lot of these true freshmen, they graduate or they get to campus and start bowl practice with a lot of these programs. So you really get 9 months. And it depends on the position. It's really hard for a freshman to learn how to be a successful wide receiver for Tennessee and their scheme. It's just hard. It's a hard scheme for receivers to learn the option stuff and just kind of get comfortable in what Tennessee asks their receivers to do. It just depends on the position and also from team to team. Everyone has different, I think Georgia is one of those where secondary guys, like Kirby obviously being a secondary guy, if a true freshman starts, it's the KJ Boldens, the Malachi Starks. They get those guys in the building sometimes where it's just, he's just too good to keep him off the field. They have tackles who are just too big or just too good. Like you said, Andrew Thomas. There are some guys that come in. It's just not going to be the norm, but when you're recruiting at a really, really high level, there are some guys that just kind of force their way onto the field because they're that good. And you're because part of it too is the locker room knows. They know who's the best player. They can see how camp's going, who's playing better than others. I think more times than not, it's going to be they're going to lean on the older kids and people have been in the program longer. But in the era of unlimited transfers, things like that, you got to keep guys engaged and show that it's a free reign opportunity where even if you're a true freshman, I think you have to open the door for them to try and win the job and get real playing time. But I think that one of the other things too that I think is going to change here in the modern CFP format is, we're going to get into this with Georgia in just a second, but I think you're going to see a lot more true freshmen play at these schools. And I'm curious how the red shirts work because a lot of these coaches are going to have to make difficult decisions, especially in the new scholarship limits and what they're going to have to do and limiting a lot of walk-ons going into next year is these guys are going to have to play. You're going to have to load manage. When you're a contender, you're going to have to start playing some of these freshmen and let them learn on the fly and make some mistakes and play them in spots you didn't necessarily have to play them in years past. So my gut is you're actually going to see a lot more talented blue chip freshmen play in the SEC in the coming years. A, to prevent portal hopping and stuff like that, but also B, because these programs want to save their older guys for the stretch run and for a playoff push. So I don't know. That's my thinking on it.
Well, and you heard Kirby Smart say something this past week about the deterioration of football, and he's talking about how teams don't have enough depth anymore. And so, yeah, you could see some more freshmen out of necessity. But I think it's still somewhere like Georgia, Georgia's not playing anyone any meaningful snaps just to keep them happy and not transfer. Like, I just don't think that sort of thing is happening. I think what's happening is if you're a freshman and you're actually good enough to crack the lineup at Georgia, it's probably because you're special. And I mean, you look at these couple guys that we named the last few years that have actually gotten on the field as freshmen at Georgia. I mean, all of these guys have been either first or second round picks, or they've been now projected to be a first round pick, like Michael Williams and Malachi Starks. Also on the offensive side of the ball, like Nate Frazier, I talked a few weeks ago about the 3-star receiver like trend that Georgia seems to get the most out of. Like, is Jacoby White that guy that's a potential playmaker on offense? He's creating some buzz. Georgia's had their second scrimmage. Nitro Tuggle, another freshman receiver.
Great names.
Nitro Tuggle, yeah, you can't really beat that. That's I'll leave it at that. But he was a 4-star. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Georgia's offense is loaded with a lot of playmakers, but if one of these guys like a Nate Frazier breaks out and like becomes a star, that you're just a freshman just breaks out that you're not even expecting, like Brock Bowers did in 2021. I mean, that just immediately makes this team that much more dangerous.
Absolutely. Matt Green, SEC East plus Oklahoma this week. You didn't like that I still broke it up with East and West in this part 1, part 2 preview series that we're doing today and Wednesday. But Matt Green, that's just, I'm not ready to quit it. And it makes it easier for me mentally to parse through this all season long. I'm going to think East and West, and it's going to take a while. And I'm putting Oklahoma in the East, and I'm putting Texas in the West. It's not reality, but it's my reality. It's how it's easier for me to break this up. It feels like Texas would be in the West if we kept it going. It feels like Oklahoma would be in the East if we kept it going. But that's what we're doing. So we're going to dive into our over-under betting preview here for the SEC Part 1 and Part 2. And we'll obviously revisit this come the fall, or come the winter when the college football 2024-2025 season wraps up. But we got a long way to go on that front. But first up here, Matt Green. Hope you got your notepad ready. It's been a little bit because we did the buy or sell for all the big conferences before.
Yeah, I didn't like this one bit, sir. Alphabetical. We gotta kick the East and the West. It's no more.
No,
Georgia's
we're
not playing South Carolina. There's no East and West. This is anarchy now.
That's what we're doing on this program. This program, we stick to the classics, Matt Green.
I will give you, it looks like, as you know, Norman, direct shot up interstate. It looks like 35, honestly. Every time I zoom in, it gets smaller, but it looks like interstate 35, right up Austin to Norman. At least direct shot, but it looks like Norman is slightly east of Austin. So I'll give you that. Oklahoma
also
would be in the east. If
Auburn's been in the West forever. It's just it's silly. But I will say
Missouri, yeah.
Twisters, not a great pitch to come visit Oklahoma. Is something I wrote down. I'm like, I feel like that's a terrible tourism movie, because I looked at my wife. I'm like, why would anyone want to go to Oklahoma? Feels like there's a lot of tornadoes in Oklahoma. They're driving all around Oklahoma, and they just keep running into tornadoes. I'm like, I think I'm out. I think I'm good. I don't think I actually need to go to Oklahoma. I'm okay.
I hope you were aware of Tornado Alley before seeing this movie, sir.
Yeah, but it seemed like if you watch this movie, Tornado Alley just feels like the state of Oklahoma. That's what that feels like when you're watching this movie. Theme for tonight, for number 1, the Georgia Bulldogs. Their over-under win total this fall, 10.5 for the Dogs. The toughest schedule in the Kirby Smart era, I think we can agree. It's a schedule that Georgia fans have been waiting for a long time, and it's going to be interesting if they're going to feel the same at the end of the season that they got with their wish, which was a bunch of big-time regular season games that are probably going to be pretty close by and large.
This isn't the schedule I was waiting on. I was waiting on the 2025 schedule, that some of these good ones are at home, or more of these good ones are at home, I should say.
Okay. Well, 10.5, Matt Green. What say you about the Dogs here and that number going into this year? Are you taking the over or the under?
I'm absolutely hammering the over, sir. Ooh. Are you kidding me? This team,
Georgia, we disagree right out of the gate here.
Georgia has not lost 2 regular season games, or I should say Georgia has lost 2 regular season games one time in the last 7 years. And it was the COVID year. Like the COVID year, I mean, you basically throw that out for everybody, right? Like whatever. It was a disappointing season. I forget how many games they played because one of them got canceled, but it was like 9-2 or something, 8-2, a 2-loss regular season. I mean,
10.
Did they play 10 that year?
I think so.
I know the Vanderbilt game, like they forfeited or something like that. I don't know. It was a weird thing, but Georgia, obviously the schedule is tough. You go at Alabama, you go at Texas, you go at Ole Miss, but I mean, all of those teams also have to play Georgia, and Georgia's a really good team right now. And like, obviously the weakness a year ago, you would have to say was the run defense. You know, it's the worst year since 2018, the only other year under Kirby Smart where they gave up over 100 yards on the ground. So you got to think that gets improved. If it doesn't, you know, we could be looking at another Georgia team that doesn't win the national championship. But I mean, even with those flaws, there's a lot of people that think, you know, Georgia was still the best team in the country a year ago. So that cleaning up the run defense is a matter of like, can Georgia win a national championship or can they be the best Georgia team yet? So I think it's really, they're still a contender regardless of, you know, if they have an elite run defense like they did in 2021 and 2022. But that's ultimately like the only real weakness I see on Georgia's team going into 2024.
Interesting. The first thing I want to throw out about this, are they going to be the first team to sit starters in regular season SEC games? Is Georgia going to be the one who becomes enemy number one? I'm curious how the Dogs fan base reacts. Like, I want to know in the Green household when you're explaining to your mom and dad, when you're watching the Vanderbilt game, and it's announced like Carson Beck is going to play the first series and then he's out. Like, they're just going to bet that Gunner and company can hold this together. And that they're going to start sitting guys.
I mean, that's not even that different.
Well, I'm not even saying I'm saying like one game. I'm talking about one series. I'm saying like they're going to be. I think this is year one of
Vanderbilt
load management.
Might be the exception there.
I think there's going to be load management with Georgia, and I think it's going to be a storyline this year that Georgia's the first one that gets attached to it. That they're playing the long game. And they're going to sit guys in important spots, or maybe not even just important, but in games that they would not have sat guys in before because you just had a 14 playoff and every game just still felt huge. That I think there's going to be some load management stuff that pops up with Georgia. Do you agree or disagree that Georgia is going to be, they're going to be the team that's under the microscope here?
That's a hard disagree for me personally. Like, I think of all the coaches to do something like that, Kirby Smart seems like the last one. Like, he's just the ultimate motivator, just like approach every single game the same way. You start getting into like, hey, you know, this game isn't that important. You know, you might be playing by the second quarter. Like that's I feel like when you get upset and you just don't come ready to play. Like, you have to approach every game like it. Like, maybe you take Carson Beck out midway through the second quarter if you're beating Vanderbilt 35-0 or something, like sure. Like, I mean, that happened in 2021. They were up like 28-0. I think JT Daniels came out at the end of the first quarter. So, I mean, in a game like Vanderbilt, like all bets are off. But
I think they might not start him is what I'm saying. Like Mississippi State in that spot. Like, I think guys might not start. I think they might just hold guys out, and it's like a bye week for them. It's like an additional bye week. But how do you justify
that to your team? That like,
I'm saying that's why
you're going to play. This game isn't important, so he's not going to play, but you still have to play.
That's what I'm saying.
Same thing watching the Hall of Fame game with the Bears and whoever. It's like, hey, you know, Caleb Williams isn't going to play in this game. We're a little worried about the turf and stuff. It's like, so these other 50 guys can play. Like, who gives a shit about them? Like, but our shiny first round pick, he's not going to play.
Here's a good over under. Carson Beck sits out one of over under. He just doesn't dress for Mississippi State, UMass, or Georgia Tech. Over under 1.5 or even half that he just doesn't dress.
I think Carson Beck sits out 0 games if he's healthy. Like, I just don't think that's a thing. And also, like, Georgia's schedule is pretty tough this year, like start to finish. Like,
well, how about this? What if you're 11-1? What if you're 11-1
November?
Going into the Tech game? Like, if you lose if you lose that game, you're still in the SEC title game, whatever. Like, it's a rivalry game, and everyone's like, oh, you got to play, and it means something. Like, what if Georgia sat all their guys for the Tech game? Because they're like, who cares? We're still in the SEC title game, and we're going to the playoff no matter what. That's in play.
You just don't know about good, clean, old-fashioned hate.
I'm telling you, that's in play. In the modern college football playoff, like, you can't get Carson hurt in that game. If you're already clinched like a playoff berth, basically, you can't play.
You can't be losing games. Like, yeah, you might have some load management and, like, in terms of, like, guys sitting more fourth quarters and stuff than you would normally do. But, like, the game's on the line. You can't be – no one's going to be –
You hate this. You hate that I've thrown this in your wheelhouse. I'm telling you.
I don't know why it would be specific to Georgia.
I didn't say it was going to be specific to Georgia. I think they're the team that gets attached to, because I could see Kirby being ahead of the curve here. Because I think Saban, if he was still around, he would take advantage of it. I think Harbaugh would do it. Like, I think a lot of the best coaches will. I mean, Tennessee's going to rotate. Tennessee is going to be careful.
To be fair, that might be what Kirby Smart is already ahead of the curve on, is just playing so many guys. Because, I mean, you look at people love to talk about how Georgia hadn't had a 1,000-yard receiver since 2002. You know, it's like, but not many people talk about like 5-6 guys getting 30 catches on a season. You know, it's like they do spread it around a lot in general. And I remember one thing when James Cook was coming out of high school, like that was one thing his mom was keying on, was the fact that Georgia had Zamir White committed in that class, that Georgia was going to be the kind of team that didn't just run the running back into the ground while he was in college. They basically were just trying to kind of save him for the NFL. And obviously you look at James Cook, his NFL season was better than anything he ever did in college, just in terms of production, not saying he wasn't good in college. But I think Kirby Smart could already be ahead of the curve in terms of kind of spreading the wealth like that and getting a lot of guys playing time and, you know, maybe keeping guys happy, like you're saying. But I don't think you're ever at any point saying like this game isn't that important, so we're going to put in a lesser player. Like, I don't think that's ever going to be the case, especially not someone like Kirby Smart, who just like seems to so just systematically approach every single week. Like, that's what Nick Saban did. Like, that's like, if there's any calling card of the Alabama dynasty, it's bringing their A game every single week. And I don't think you can do that if you're worried about load management.
I think it's coming to the SEC and the Big Ten, but we shall see. I think where it's likely to happen, I think, is like the Michigan-Ohio State game. If they're 11-0 and 10-1 going into that game, and they're already going to play the next week, I think you're definitely going to see something like there. Like, maybe you don't show everything, but I don't know. You can't just be benching people for the in-state rivalry. Like, I don't know. I don't see it. I'm going to make the prediction. I'm going to say if Georgia is 11-1 or better going into the Georgia Tech game, Carson Beck does not play in the Georgia Tech game. That's my prediction.
I would bet you a lot of money, if he is healthy, that he will start that game.
This will be fun to revisit.
If I were a betting man.
This will be fun to revisit. Bama feels like the most logical loss to me. If I had to pick one that's most likely, Georgia does not have a lot of success playing in Tuscaloosa. A lot of teams don't have a lot. I understand it's a little bit different going into Tuscaloosa now with Kalen DeBoer. To me, that one feels like the most difficult and most likely for the Dogs to go down. I think Texas, especially going down multiple backs, I think Texas is the one that people are going to circle, but I think Georgia's going to win at Texas. I think Georgia's going to beat Ole Miss. UT at home, we'll see how Tennessee season's going at that point. I still probably would lean Georgia there. Florida is always going to be weird in a neutral site in October. I don't really know, but the thing about this schedule too that I think's interesting, and this is why I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, I'm still going 10-2. I think Georgia goes 10-2 and makes the playoff. I think they lose to Bama, and then I think they lose one of at Ole Miss, at Texas, Tennessee at home, Florida, and neutral site. They play all those games in mid-October to mid-November. I don't trust the receivers. I think losing Ra is a sneaky important thing for them. I don't love. I think what's going to be really interesting is I like their running back room a lot. I think Georgia fans are going to be happy with the running backs, whether it's the Robinsons, Nathaniel Frazier, whether that's obviously with Trevor Etienne. Like, I think they're stacked there. I think the defensive line's going to be good. I think they're going to be good in the secondary. But I think the schedule is just arduous. I think it's set up for them to drop 2 games. And it's going to surprise some Georgia fans that they drop 2 here. But I think they still end up in the SEC title game. Could see them still win the conference. I think they're as close to a playoff lock as it gets. They were number 1 in third down conversions a season ago. What if that goes down a little bit? They were first in long scrimmage plays a season ago. What if they come back down there? They only can go back down a little bit in terms of this offense. And I think they have less firepower than they did a season ago. I think losing Ladd and Brock are going to be hard to replicate. I think Oscar Delp is a good player, but he's not going to be Brock Bowers. I think Arian Smith needs to have a big year. I think they need someone to pop and replace that production with Ladd McConkey. I don't know. They have some guys who could be that. It's just unknown. I don't think Dylan Bell has like superstar potential. I think he could be solid. Colby Young could be solid. We'll see. I don't know. I think there's just a lot of.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think Dominic Lovett is really the only surefire receiver at Georgia right now that you can go ahead and pencil in is going to be a dude this fall and should be really, really good with Carson Beck. Everyone else, I think, is a question mark in that receiver room in terms of what they'll actually do production-wise. I think Georgia's going to be okay. I just think they're going to go through growing pains. I think it's going to take some time for Carson to get comfortable with his receivers. I think it's going to take some time for him to get comfortable with the new tight ends. I think they're going to lean on the run game a lot early because I think they're just loaded there with the Robinsons and Etienne and Frazier. So I don't know. I'm very curious how it unfolds, but that's my gut. Is I'm taking the under 10-2, and I think they lose at Bama is the one I would say is the most likely lock, and then they lose one of those four that I said there. So do you? I obviously you disagree, but is that a fair take to have here, Matt Green?
I would say Dylan Bell in that receiving group is probably the one I think has the most like star potential. But I think you've seen a lot of Georgia receiving groups that are just like a 4 or 5 like really solid guys, and that's all you really need. Obviously, Bowers and McConkey, you had a couple stars there. But I mean, returning the quarterback, like I think most people kind of question after Todd Monken left, like, oh, Georgia's offense was only going to have to go down from there, and Georgia's offense, I would argue, was better in 2023 than it was in 2022 under Mike Bobo. So you look at the schedule, and I will have to say, just to fact check, Georgia played in Tuscaloosa 3 times in the 21st century, and they're 2-1. And that's all I'll say.
Hold on, are we counting the COVID year?
Had some success in Tuscaloosa.
Are we counting the COVID year?
Yeah, that's the only time Georgia lost.
Oh, is it? Okay,
that's the only one they lost.
It helps my argument, so we'll keep that one. And then, What were the other two? No, when were the other two?
2002 and 2007.
That's what I thought. Okay, so one of those was not Saban, and the other one was that even?
It was year one of Saban. Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't count either. Toss it out. So they're 0-1.
That was Mark Richt, and that was the year Alabama was on suspension, so they couldn't play in the SEC championship.
Yeah,
or on probation
toss them out. Toss them.
But they went like 9-3. They were like a good team in 2002.
Toss them. And what were they in the title games? What is the? Hold on, we're looking as a whole. Georgia has not very.
Pat Dye lost. Said like Georgia wasn't. I think Pat Dye
lost
said
to
Georgia
a bad.
wasn't man enough.
You lost. You were the better team and lost to. You lost to Bama. Why are you still confident? Bama has still quietly owned Georgia. Like
no,
it's
I
not
was simply just saying. You said Georgia doesn't have success going to Tuscaloosa.
Well, I should have said Georgia doesn't really have success against Alabama. Is what I would say.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not gonna dispute that, but I had to dispute the Tuscaloosa line. I think it was Pat Dye back in like 2002 said that like Georgia wasn't man enough to go into Tuscaloosa and win. And so that was like the cap, like the headline after that week, that man enough, that whole thing. But it was also supposedly tongue in cheek, like Pat Dye said it to try to amp Georgia up. Obviously, Pat Dye. Wait, am I confusing? Pat Dye was a UGA grad, right? Am I confusing it?
Pat Dye, you're talking about the legendary Auburn Pat Dye?
Yeah, he was a UGA grad. And then Vince Dooley was an Auburn grad. That's kind of what went to like Georgia and Auburn rivalry was friendly for a long time.
You went to UGA, yeah.
Great
all-time record, man.
I digress. So I just had to fact check that one point. So obviously Alabama, Georgia has not had a lot of success against Alabama in recent years. I just feel like Georgia knows Alabama and they don't know Texas. And I think with some inexperience in the secondary, like if I'm pointing to one regular season loss, like Texas just feels like the one that Georgia loses. If I have to like what was the Missouri or not Missouri? What was the Ole Miss score last year? Like 50 something? Like Georgia put up a 50 spot on Ole Miss, right?
Yeah, but I mean they're going to Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is better.
Of course, but it's like, is Georgia that much worse? They put a 50 spot on them. Like that game was like barely competitive after the
I'm
end
not
of the
saying,
first
but
quarter.
and again, I'm not predicting Ole Miss. I am saying that's just a brutal month-long stretch. Like Florida, we'll see what they look like, but it's the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. It's a rivalry game. We'll see what that looks like. Tennessee at home, we'll see where Tennessee's at. Like, is Tennessee undefeated at that point? Are they having another 2022 season? Are they rolling? What does Nico look like? That's going to be interesting to look at. And the other one is at Texas. So we'll see.
It's definitely a tough schedule. I just look at with what Georgia did to Tennessee and Ole Miss a year ago. Like,
very
those
different
teams could be
situations
better,
for
but
too.
it's hard to be that worried when it was just such domination in both of those games.
Well, we disagree right out of the gate here. I'm curious on the Vols aspect of this. 9.5, Matt Green, or 8.5, excuse me, because I'm just going to go ahead and say,
yeah, I got 8.5 here.
Yeah, it's the lock of this season outside of one other one that I have is the lock. I have 2 guaranteed locks. Tennessee over 8.5 is a guaranteed lock.
Yeah, I was shocked by this number, to be honest. I think 9.5 is it's a way sexier play. Like, because I think most people are thinking over on the 8.5.
Yeah. So your reason as to why you think the Vols are going over, Matt Green, when you look at this schedule and what this team is going to look like this fall, why do you take the over for Tennessee?
I think Tennessee weirdly feels like one of the higher ceilings in the entire conference, or higher floors in the entire conference this year. Like, and that's something I wouldn't have said a year or two ago about Josh Heupel, but this team feels like at absolute worst, like they're winning 8 games. I guess, I mean, obviously you can get in, Nico gets hurt, whatever, some doomsday scenario, but this team, like, there's a few toss-up games for sure. Like, I mean, how many preseason top 20 teams on the schedule? Like 3 or 4. So, like, this is not an easy schedule, but obviously Tennessee fans have to be feeling good with what happened last time Alabama came to Knoxville. Like, the Georgia game is the biggest one you're going to circle as like a likely loss. But I mean, you lose to Georgia, like you still have what? Two you have to lose 3 more to not get to that 9-win mark. So I think they're safe to get. They feel like a 9-3, like a 9-3 is like a disappointing type of season. But I mean, I could easily see 9-3, 10-2 for them.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think they are a very high floor team, and that's part of the reason I think the lock is there. I think part of the reason they're a high floor team is the defensive line. I think this defensive line is the best in the country. I think the defense has gotten better every single year in scoring, from the mid 70s to the 30s in 2022 into the 20s in 2023. The defense, like Pierce, like what they're going to be able to rotate with Pierce, Josephs, Herring, and Ross, the Leo spot is just silly. They're absolutely loaded on the defensive line. It's going to wreak havoc on a lot of opposing defenses. I think Nico, even if he's not like the best quarterback in the country, if he's not, like right out of the gate, if he goes through some growing pains and he's still like, I don't know, 3rd, 4th best quarterback in the conference, and he's getting his feet wet and he's still making some big plays, not turning the ball over. Because that's another big reason that Tennessee always has a high floor under Heupel.
Wait, so his 3rd or 4th best quarterback in the conference? Hold on, his 3rd or 4th best quarterback in the conference, is that disappointing?
I think it depends on what it looks like by the end of the year. Because, I mean, if Carson Beck, Jackson Dart are both dealing and he's finishes 3rd, I think that's probably, I mean, there's a lot of good quarterbacks in this conference, Matt Green. Like, there's a lot.
I'm just trying to gauge the temperature for how the Tennessee fans are feeling. You're like, I mean, even if he's only like the 3rd or 4th best quarterback, I feel like his first year starting, like, I think, to be the best quarterback in the conference.
I think the expectation from fans, fair or not, is like, yeah, at some point in the next 2 years while he's here, is he gets to the best quarterback in the conference. And I think that's more than possible here going into next year. But we'll see. Like, it's still like he looked great in the Iowa game, but let's see what it looks like. Part of it, the receivers, I think, are going to be a lot better than what we saw a year ago. Injuries kind of messed that up a little bit. The one caveat, I think, is the secondary. I mean, like I said, Pierce was named ESPN's top player this week. I think one of the interesting things for them is Heupel's lost 1 home game in the last 2 years at Tennessee, and it was to Georgia last year. half of his games he's lost at Tennessee in the conference have been against Alabama and Georgia. I look at the schedule, and I think a lot of fans are like, it's a nice schedule for Tennessee. But one of the issues I have with it is Tennessee does not play an important home game until mid-October. Like the Florida game is not until October 16th, I want to say. They play in Charlotte and a neutral site against NC State, who's a top 20 team. It's going to be a good game.
October 12th.
Yeah. And then they go to Oklahoma for Heupel's return and then get a bye and then go to Fayetteville.
Sneaky huge game on that.
I mean, that might be college game day for that one when you look at that slate. And then you get a week off, but then you go right back on the road to Fayetteville, where I think they'll be like a 3-touchdown favorite. But again, you don't play an important home game and that's your biggest attribute for Tennessee, is it's so hard to win there, and this offense makes it unbearable for most schools. When you're not Georgia, coming into Tennessee with this Coliseum feel, with this kind of offense, this kind of pass rush with James Pierce, like I saw it up close in person. Like Spencer Rattler was rattled. Like it was something. Max Johnson was rattled by this defensive line and this just fan base. Like it was intense. It's an asset, but you don't get to that Florida Bama back to back until you get through those first 3 games. So I think Tennessee, it might shock some people, but I would say Tennessee is a lock for the CFP if they get through that slate undefeated, because then it gives you the pressure. It takes the pressure off for you to sweep Bama and Florida at home back-to-back weeks without a gap. Like you can drop one of them and still only have the Georgia game as the last toss-up on the schedule. And if you lose that, you're still 10-2 and you're making the playoff. So what I'm saying is like Tennessee's schedule.
You're saying they start 5-0, they're in the playoff.
Yes, 100%.
I don't know. I don't know about that. With I don't know, like at least the 2 best teams on their schedule. I don't think a 10-2 SEC team is just going to be a lock.
No absolute lock. Go ahead and pencil it in, Matt Green.
I mean, it could
pencil
be.
That in stone.
I don't know. But I don't know. You also had the Florida Gators, a team that, they're the ultimate wild card team, the ultimate chaos team in the SEC this year, because they play all the good teams. So they've got to beat somebody at some point, right? But I don't know. That's bold right there. 5-0. Those last 7 games are gonna mean something.
But a lot of them are at home, and Tennessee is so good at home, and especially under Heupel. If you can get out of Oklahoma clean, and part of the reason I like the Oklahoma matchup more and more, Oklahoma's got 5 new offensive linemen, 5 new starters. Going up against this pass rush, I think that's a recipe for disaster for Oklahoma. I don't think that's where you want to be, is a bunch of new starters in the offensive line against this Tennessee pass rush. Like, I don't think that's a enviable spot. But I want that to be a day game. If that's a night game, I'm going to be pissed, because if it's a night game, I'm reserving the right to change my opinion on Oklahoma. We need that to be the LSU spot. That needs to be 11 a.m. kick. Like, I don't know who we need to put the call in, but that needs to be an 11 a.m. kick. That is what I'm pushing.
I don't even know what the top slot is right now. Like, I guess the 3:30 number 1 slot is kind of over. It feels like some of the bigger games they've already named being like 8 o'clock games. But I'm hoping they still keep some of those prime. Texas Oklahoma is a 3:30, and they changed that because that was always high noon. But I like the bye week right after the Alabama game. Like last time Alabama came, like I feel like that city needed a week to recover from. I think there was like a cupcake last time in 2022, the week after Alabama. It's like that's what they needed. They put so much into that Alabama game. They need like an off week the week after.
It's a good question. Who was it after? Hold on, now you have me thinking. I'm like, who
it
did
was?
Tennessee
They played UT Martin.
UT Martin,
the week after,
and then Mizzou, right? Or is that Kentucky?
I think
after that?
Kentucky, Georgia, Mizzou.
Okay. All right, Matt Green. Next up, the Kentucky Wildcats, 6.5 for the Wildcats. This is interesting. I mean, they have gone 7-6. The last 2 years under Mark Stoops. He flirts with leaving. It looked like he was moving on to Texas A&M this offseason, and he is just back. Liam Cohen is gone again for the second time in like 3 years as OC. You bring in...
Let me add to your stat there. Mm-hmm. They haven't won less than 7 regular season games. They've done that one time in the last 8 years. Like, they're always winning at least 7 games.
Yeah.
So this 6.5 was interesting to me.
And I'm curious where you go on this one because we agreed on the Vols, disagreed on Georgia. I think their defense is going to be great under Coach White. Like, I think Deion Walker, Maxwell Hairston, like, they've got dudes on that side of the ball. Part of it is, like, I think they're going to end up being you're going to watch a lot of Kentucky football. I think you really want to see what Brock does. I think you're just going to be Kentucky fan Jace here when they're not playing Georgia, is my prediction here. Matt Green is on the Sunday show. It's going to be like, I ended up watching a lot of Kentucky this week, and I wanted to see what Brock looked like. And I wonder how many Georgia fans do that this fall. But Key and Brown, good receivers. I don't really trust the offensive line. 2 new tackle starters, 1 former Tennessee offensive tackle, Gerald Mincey. I still just think there's a weird thing with Stoops coming back where I think there's like bad juju in the air here, Matt Green. There's just something that feels off where I feel like we're ending the end of the Stoops era at Kentucky, where I think we talked about it on one of the last couple of pods, where like Kentucky's always got to either be like the Hal Mummy air raid, or they need to be like all defense and just grind it out and do what Stoops has done, where he's been really good at Kentucky for a long time. The last 2 years have been rough. I just lean on this year being rough too, but I also think I can't wait for that loser leaves town match against South Carolina, because I think both programs need that game in a huge way. That happening in the second week of the season is crazy. Like, I think that's going to decide which season both schools kind of have, where I think if Kentucky can win that one, then they're probably going bowling and so like that. Like, I saw KSR talking about like why they could get to 9-3 this season and make the playoff. And I'm like, Kentucky fans are all over the place, but they're also like, we could see it being 5-7. I don't think Kentucky fans have any idea what to do with this season and what to do with the Kentucky Wildcats. They are going from not making bowl eligibility to making the college football playoff. If you want the anti-Tennessee team, it's Kentucky, where their floor is low. And I guess if you really want to talk Brock Vandagriff as like the most talented quarterback they've had in the Stoops era, some talented wideouts, a really good defense, then yeah, maybe. I just don't see it, Matt Green. I think this is actually going to be a 6-6 team. So I'm going to go under on the Wildcats this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how some former 5-star quarterbacks are still treated like 5 stars and some are like washed up busts, you know, like, because I feel like Vandagriff, he still has the former 5-star label, but I don't think really anyone thinks this guy's going to come in and be like an All-American or anything. Mm-hmm. Like, obviously he has the ability to potentially, you know, just be the X factor that sets Kentucky football off, but it's probably going to be somewhere in the middle of that, you know, but I don't know. Their schedule is obviously super tough this year. Like at Texas, at Tennessee, at Ole Miss, at Florida, Georgia and Auburn both at home. And like you talked about that South Carolina game early on, but it feels like they can kind of sleepwalk to like 5 wins. Like, it almost feels like you got like 5 or 6 almost guaranteed on here. Like,
but 5 wins, Matt Green. If you get 5-7, is he gone? Like, do they fire him? I'm saying
like 5 or 6 that are like guaranteed. So I mean, he's only got to win a couple like of these toss-up games.
But like when you look at the schedule, who's the toss-up you're giving him?
I mean, they absolutely boat raced Florida a year ago. Like,
do you think that ends up at some point? Like, do they just keep beating Florida year over year?
I mean, South Carolina's beat them the last 2 years, but I mean they've kind of dominated South Carolina in recent history before that. So just beating South Carolina isn't some sort of crazy feat, but beating Florida, I think they've beaten Florida 3 years in a row. So like that's obviously not out of the question. And then Auburn, like I expect Auburn to be improved this year, but I mean, Auburn should loses to Kentucky, like I'm not going to be surprised. Like
Auburn should be Kentucky this year. Like that. I mean,
I'll probably pick Auburn to win that game, but there's a lot of games on this schedule, like Ole Miss. Like people are treating Ole Miss like they're an established powerhouse. Like Ole Miss has not really proven that they're just this powerhouse that's guaranteed to finish.
I mean, are you throwing Kentucky on the road at Ole Miss as a victory here?
I'm not picking them, but I'm just saying, like,
wasn't that game 2 years ago crazy in Ole Miss? Am I misremembering? Wasn't it like down to the wire?
Yeah, they had them. What was it?
They go to overtime.
It was Will Levis like threw what would have been the go-ahead touchdown, but then there was like it was some sort of like dude lined up, not enough men on the line of scrimmage or something like that.
Yeah,
there's some like it was like a 4th down they converted that would have won the game, and then I think they threw a pick. I think after that happened.
Yeah, okay.
So
I remember it was really close down to the wire, and Kentucky
or
had the ball to win. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean they've played them close. It's not like Ole Miss is just some sort of juggernaut. Like, I mean, I look at Texas and I look at Georgia as like automatic losses on their schedule. But like, I
Tennessee
mean,
is an
Texas,
automatic loss.
I mean, yeah, at Texas and at Tennessee, those three are probably the automatic losses. But it's like after that, I mean, I don't know. Kentucky's not usually supposed to be that good, and they win about 7 games. So I don't know. Like, because I was going back and looking at all their 7-6 seasons, and they lost the bowl game in every single season that they went 7-6 under Stoops. So those are 7 regular season wins. I don't know. I think I'm going to go over on Kentucky.
Okay. I mean, it's fair. 7
also,
wins.
we agreed on. Did you say that? We agreed on Tennessee. We both had them going over.
Yes.
Okay.
South Carolina. Oof. 5.5. Matt Green. What say you?
I think you said it. Like 7 preseason top 20 teams on this schedule. Like, everyone's talking about Florida. But I mean, outside of Georgia not being on the schedule, like, this schedule is like every bit as difficult as Florida's. Not to mention Clemson could be better than Florida State this year. So that also kind of could boost South Carolina's schedule a little bit. But yeah, I mean, Lenoris Sellers, like, are you a believer in Lenoris Sellers? Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like last year you're kind of more Shane Beamer on the hot seat than me. I feel like last year was really the first underachieving year that he's had since he's been at South Carolina. So I think he deserves
trying to get Dan Mullen in the head coach's chair.
I think he deserves at least a couple of down years before you start to look another direction. But I think this might be 2 in a row. I just don't see it with South Carolina. This schedule is just brutal, and I don't know. I just don't know what to expect from this team a year ago. Like, as disappointing as they were a year ago, like, they still had Spencer Rattler, like, kind of making plays to make them as good as they were. And not to mention Xavier Legette. Like, they don't have any NFL talent on this offense as far as I can see. And like, those are 2 NFL players.
Maybe Rocket Sanders.
I mean, if he channels his 2021 Arkansas, yeah, I mean, he was one of the best running backs in the SEC. That could or couldn't happen. But yeah, I mean, sure, he could be an NFL player. I don't see him being like a big time draft pick or anything.
This schedule, like you said, I mean, it's wild how bad this is for them, because the reason if I'm a South Carolina fan, I'm just kind of demoralized is, like, ODU first. Like, you should get that one. I think it'll be weirdly close, though. I think it's one of those you're looking Ricky Ronnie over there at Old Dominion. I think they're going to keep that close. At Kentucky, I don't think they're going to be favored. LSU at home, they're not going to be favored. They get Akron, who's one of the worst FBS teams at home. Should win that one. So you're 2-2. Old Miss at home, 2-3. At Alabama, you won't be favored in that one, 2-4. At Oklahoma, won't be favored in that one, 2-5. A&M at home, probably won't be favored there, 2-6. At Vandy, 3-6. Mizzou at home, 3-7. Wofford at home, 4-7. At Clemson, like, this looks like a 4-8 type deal. And then the reason I bring up, like, the hot seat is just, like, when I'm going through the schedule, and then, like, you're trying to talk yourself into Rocket Sanders, and maybe Lenoris Sellers will be pretty good. Yeah. I mean, this offensive line sucked last year. They were bottom 15 in sacks allowed last year. They were 76th in long scrimmage plays. They were 24th in passing offense, but you lost the guy who got you there. Like, Spencer Rattler's an NFL quarterback. Like, you lost that guy. So there's going to be a drop off there too. I think bowl eligibility is, I mean, probably out of the question for this team. Like, I think it's going to be a rough year for South Carolina. 3-9, I think, is on the table, depending on how the season really gets it gets a little bit hairy for them. I just think it's just tough. I think Beamer's in a tough spot here with this season. I think the wins aren't there. The talent isn't there, and the wins aren't there. So I think they're like a 4-8, 3-9 type team. I think South Carolina is going to be bad this year. It's my gut. So give me the
one thing I'll say is that Williams-Brice is low key one of the toughest places to play when it's rocking. And you do get LSU at home. You get Ole Miss at home. You get A&M at home. They did at least beat them. Beamer did beat A&M one time. So they have gotten A&M one time since they joined the conference.
Yeah.
And that was the last time they came to Williams-Brice. Also Missouri at home, the Battle of Columbia. So those are 4 preseason ranked teams that you get at home, like there's a chance they sneak up and get one. So, and I think that's a lot of what Shane Beamer's like. I mean, it's like, honestly what his tenure has kind of been to this point. It's kind of been vibes. Like people just kind of like him. I think everyone just loved Frank Beamer, and by association, they just like Shane Beamer. But it's just about vibes. And if they have that game that people remember, or Williams Bryce was rocking and they upset a top 15 team, then maybe that 5-7 season is that 6-6 is good enough to kind of feel good. But yeah, I'm generally with you. I just don't, any wins that they get just about in conference outside of Vanderbilt and Kentucky are going to surprise me. And especially the Clemson game.
I don't disagree. Oklahoma, 7.5. I think this line probably surprised me the most of any of them, Matt Green. What say you about the Sooners this year?
Yeah, I'm with you. Oklahoma definitely, it felt like I don't have them stacked up side by side, but it felt like they got the raw end of the new Big 12 partnership compared to Texas. But yeah, they have 6 teams, preseason top 15 opponents, along with going at Jordan-Hare Stadium, which we all know about. So I feel like some of those SEC naysayers for years, and I definitely have to include myself in this, that they've kind of argued that Oklahoma going 11-1 in that Big 12 every year, 12-1 winning the conference, like this team's winning 8 games, 7 games if they're in the SEC. Like, I think those people might be right for the wrong reasons. Like, I think they might come in and get an absolute like rude awakening, but it's also because the SEC schedule just got real serious this year. Like this isn't necessarily the same schedule teams were playing back in 2018 and 2017 when Lincoln Riley was getting to the college ball playoff. But this schedule is brutal, and I just feel like there's a lot of revisionist history for how 2023 went in the Big 12. Like Texas was good and won the conference, but last time I checked, Oklahoma beat Texas last year. And I feel like a lot of people forget that. It is year 3 of Brent Venables, and he's got them playing like better defense. Also, like Dylan Gabriel left, but Jackson Arnold is a former 5-star quarterback. Like there's a lot of reasons to be encouraged in Norman, Oklahoma. And this team just does not feel like a 7-win team to me. Like Oklahoma it feels like they have more going for them than that, even with the tough schedule. So I'm going to say over on Oklahoma. I think at least 8-4. They could maybe even be a 9-3, 10-2 type of team this year.
I actually, like he said, part of it is like Oklahoma might be better than their record says. Like Florida's going to be the king of that, I think, this year is my gut. I think that 7.5, like you said, a lot of it's just the schedule. I think part of it is a wait and see on the 5 new starting offensive linemen. Like you just don't want to be in that spot of having 5 new linemen going into the SEC. Like that just doesn't mean they're all going to be bad. It doesn't mean that it's going to be rough. It just means there's probably going to be a learning curve there, and you don't want to be learning on the fly with Tennessee coming in the first couple weeks in the season. Your first SEC game being against the best defensive line in the conference. Like that's just not really what you want to be. The whispers about Jackson Darnold throwing a lot of picks. I mean, I think he threw 4 picks in the bowl game for Oklahoma. Like, what if Jackson Darnold is not Dylan Gabriel had an elite season for Oklahoma last year. I mean, he single-handedly pulled Oklahoma over Texas in that awesome Red River shootout last year. Like Dylan Gabriel, I think is a loss for them. Like Jackson Darnold could be great. The difference between Nico and Jackson is like Nico's walking into a situation where I think Nico is going to walk into a better situation than what Joe walked into last year. And I also just think he's going to be better. Jackson, I don't think can be better than Dylan last year. I think maybe in next year he can get there, but I think there's going to be a drop-off. I mean, you lose your offensive coordinator, Jeff Levy, to Mississippi State to be the head coach. They were 112th in passing defense a year ago. The defense, like, maybe you like the secondary, the linebackers. Danny Stutzman's a good player. They were 77th in explosive pass rate allowed last year per PFF. They didn't run the ball well, and that was an issue for Oklahoma fans all year long. I don't know. This schedule, like we all talk about the Florida schedule in the back end. The last, from October 26th on, Matt Green, they play at Ole Miss, Maine at home, at Mizzou, Alabama comes to town, and then at LSU to close. I mean, we talk about Florida's closing schedule. Oklahoma's closing schedule is brutal. So they need to stack up as many wins as they can early on because it's going to get rougher as the season goes on. So, like, you kind of really need to win that Tennessee game at home early if you're Oklahoma. You need to beat Texas in that spot. Like, you need to gobble up some wins, but I'm going to say they're 7-5. I'm going to say the under. I think Oklahoma is a 7-5 team this year, and I think it's rougher for Oklahoma than it is for Texas year one in the SEC.
Yeah, I feel like people forget that this team went 10-3 last year. Like, that's the other thing. Like, it's not everything, but it's trying to read between the lines. When you're not playing as a former 5-star quarterback and the guy in front of you is balling out, it's like, then I don't really think anything about you not playing. But that's what I constantly go back to when I look at Joe Milton and Nico. It's like, why did Nico never play when Joe Milton was giving you subpar quarterback play the entire season? So, when you look at a Brock Vandagriff not playing or a Jackson Arnold not really playing, it's like, I just look at it different because those teams were getting elite QB play.
Final thing on here. Well, I'll give you a stat. I love BCF Toys on it's a great advanced analytics site for college football. They have I thought you would like this. So for drive success rate, Oklahoma was tied last year with Washington in net drive success rate. Washington went to the national title game last year. So my broader point is that offense is really good and their drives are really solid. So Oklahoma fans got frustrated, but like it was good. Oklahoma, I think there's a drop-off. I think you're going to see a drop-off offensively is my gut, and I don't think the defense is going to be good enough to overcome that. And overcome in the sense of like 9-3, maybe being a sneaky playoff team. I don't see it for the Sooners. Mizzou, 9.5, Matt Green. Man, how the times have changed. Mizzou, people were worried last year. Is this it for Eli Drinkwitz? He was 16-19 before last season at Mizzou, Matt Green. We were wondering if he was in the hot seat and what kind of season he had. And here they are after coming off an 11-win season a year ago. 9.5, higher than Tennessee, one of the highest in the conference. What say you about this over-under for the Tigers?
I just look at Missouri, and I think a lot is talked about how it's like one of the easier schedules in the conference this year. They go at Alabama, at Texas A&M. They do get Oklahoma at home. Part of me just feels like last year was as good as it gets for Missouri. Like, there's still something that like I'm not buying. Like, I mean, you think about like just stack up their wins a year ago, and I'm not taking away from, was it an 11-win season? 11-2.
Yeah,
I'm not taking away from it, but I mean, what is I wish I could remember the name of their kicker, their swole kicker from a year ago.
Yeah.
Hitting the 60-yarder to beat Kansas State. They had like the close win versus Middle Tennessee State a year ago. Like I can't remember exactly what happened in the Florida game, but I remember a miraculous win to beat Florida. Like, I think Florida had that with like a minute left, and Missouri ends up winning by 2. Like, it felt like everything came together. They did play Georgia well. They were a good team, don't get me wrong, and obviously beat Ohio State in the bowl game. But I don't know that it gets better than that for Ohio State. Like, Brady Cook's a good player. I think Luther Burden is potentially the best receiver in college football in 2024. But I don't know that this team has the roster to just be that 10-win team year in and year out. Like, something seems, I don't know, just superficial, like hollow about Missouri's success a year ago. I'm gonna take the under on Missouri, mainly because I'm just not a believer that they can do it 2 years in a row.
I didn't think you were going to go this way. I thought you would have still been riding the high of Mizzou playing Georgia close. I thought you would have been like, look, they earned my respect last year. They were fighting till the end against my Dogs on the road in Athens. But losing their DC to LSU, I think, is a huge loss. I think Baker going to LSU is tough. Brady Cook probably doesn't get the respect he deserves nationally still, or even by SEC fans. He was 20th in explosive pass rate last season. I'm curious how Marcus Carroll, the Georgia State running back transfer, who was really good for the Panthers last year, how he factors in and what that combination looks like. Luther Burden, best receiver in the country, probably coming into this year. But they were 130th in explosive run rate allowed last year per PFF. Matt Green. I mean, the all-time example is 3 years ago now. Man, time flies when Tennessee ran for like 800 yards and got their defensive line coach fired after that game in Columbia. But I think this defense is going to take a step back, is my gut. My gut is they take a step back. The schedule, though, makes it really nice for Mizzou. Like, I think Kirby Moore is one of the best offensive coordinators in the conference. I think this offense, there's no path to me for this offense being subpar. I think they figured something out. They're a veteran group. I think they hit the portal well. Burden, like I said, it's good. Brady Cook's really good. The offensive line should be solid. I think the defense takes a step back. I think the defense struggles this season. But the schedule is just so nice. Like, they don't really play a challenging road game until October 26th at Alabama. They lose that one. At South Carolina, you get Oklahoma at home. You get Auburn at home. At A&M, yeah, maybe. At Mississippi State, that might get feisty. Arkansas is always weird in the rivalry game there. I don't know. I don't love this Mizzou team, but the schedule is just really good. Like, I think Mizzou is going to be a lot more of a high scoring. You're going to see some games where it's like Mizzou won 38-35, or like, I just think you're going to see more. They're going to have to do a lot more offensively to win some games, but I do think they are. So I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm going to do this, Matt Green. I think Mizzou hits the over. This schedule is just too nice. Like, it just, the offense is too good. I think they're going 10-2. I think they're a playoff team potentially here.
So Tennessee and Missouri are in the playoff for Chase Thomas, it sounds like.
They're right there. The schedules for Tennessee and Mizzou are just really good. Like, that's just the fact.
Let's not forget when
Mizzou, if you don't do it this year, by the way, Mizzou, I mean, when are you going to do it? Because you're not going to get a schedule like this again, and Brady Cook's gone for this year. Luther Burden's gone. Like, Mizzou, we talk about Ole Miss being all in with their chips here in the SEC this year. Mizzou's also right there. Like, Eli and company have to make the playoff with this group and this schedule. So I'm throwing that bone to them. They should be 10-2. Anything less than 10-2, this season was a gigantic failure, and I'd be super ticked off if I was a Mizzou fan.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Let's not forget when Eli Drinkowitz started running his mouth. Like, they lost last time they played Boston College, like a couple years ago. So, like, are you shocked if Boston College beats Missouri week 3? I mean, like,
yeah, I'm shocked.
I'm not picking it, but are you shocked if they lose at South Carolina? Like, are you shocked if Arkansas beats them? Like, I think there's a lot of these games that I'm not necessarily picking preseason, but I'm not going to be surprised if Missouri is just like a good 8-4 team by the end of the year.
Okay. Final two here. Florida, Matt Green, my second lock of this very program. Florida's a lock for the over. 4.5 is just preposterously low for this team. Like, even if it's a rough year for the Gators and they don't go bowling, 4.5 is just, I can't do it. Like, Florida, I understand the back end of the schedule. Graham Mertz is a really good quarterback. Graham Mertz settled in at Florida this past year. I think Florida's still, I mean, they're a blue chip team in the top 15 in the blue chip ratio.
Is he really good?
I think Graham Mertz is really good. I think Graham Mertz is a really good college quarterback.
I think he's
point.
Good.
Okay. I didn't say elite. I didn't say really elite. Good. I didn't say great. I said really good. Like, he's a B+ quarterback. I think B+ is
Fair
really
enough.
good, right? He's a B+ quarterback.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
He was second in completion percentage behind Bo Nix in Oregon last year. They were 70th in rushing, though, which was weird. I thought it was a lot better with the two-headed monster with Johnson and Etienne. They were 16th in red zone conversions nationally. So they were really good in the red zone. But the defense, 122nd in defensive yards per play. The defense got obliterated all year long. And that's got to get fixed for Florida to have any chance to get bowling and to survive this year. Because I think everyone who keeps putting Billy Napier on the hot seat, I just look at this situation and I think if you're Scott Strickland, the AD, you know what the schedule is. Everyone knows. So if you're looking at Billy Napier and you have DJ Lagway ready to go next year, and you're still going to end up with a top 10, top 15 class at worst, you're developing well. Like, as long as you go bowling and it's not like a tire fire down the stretch, I think you roll into next year and be like, all right, let's really see what we have with a superstar quarterback potentially, a lot of talent returning, and let's just get through this year. I think it should just be get through this year bowling, and we'll have much better schedule luck, better just more reasons for optimism in 2025. I mean, but
those are two different conversations, though.
Yeah, but I'm taking the over.
Conversations like you're. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I think this offense is gonna be a top 30, top 25 offense. And I think the defense will improve a little bit. So I don't know. I just think Graham Mertz, smart quarterback, doesn't turn it over. I think they're going to be fine at running back. I think the offensive line should be better. I still like some of their pass catchers. Losing Ricky Pearsall hurts a little bit, but they get another Arizona State transfer. He'll probably be good. Seems like they have a good track record there. But I don't know. I'm not saying Florida's going to go 9-3, 10-2, and Graham Mertz is going to be Joe Burrow in year 2 in the swamp. But I think they're going to be better than people are anticipating. They're going to get some wins, especially at home in the swamp. So give me the Gators like 6-6, 7-5 this year. And I think Billy Napier keeps his job and goes in next year with a lot more optimism is my guess. So give me the Gators over.
See, I think there's two different things at play there because, yeah, everyone is taking this schedule into account. And also, I feel like we're talking about this Florida schedule a little too much. Like, I understand this schedule is just absurd. Like, the last 5 weeks of it, it's 5 top 12 teams right now. Like, we'll see how good these teams turn out to be. But if Florida was better, we would not be talking about the schedule like this. Like, we just talked about Oklahoma's schedule. We talked about Georgia's schedule. Like, Georgia's got the schedule they have, and they're 10.5. Is their preseason win total. It's because they're one of the really good teams. For one, if Florida is a really good team, then one of these teams is probably not as good. Like right off the bat, Georgia's probably a little worse, or Tennessee, or Florida, or LSU, or maybe someone is probably just not as insurmountable if Florida is actually a good team. So it's just kind of the zero-sum game that comes with sports. But obviously, not completely taking anything away from the schedule. It's still tough. But I just don't know. Everyone's saying the right things right now, right? But at the end of the season, if they go 4-8, 5-7, no one is going to care at all about how difficult the schedule was. I saw some clip of Danny Werfel talking this a few weeks ago on some radio show where he's talking about the schedule's brutal. If this team, they go 8-4, there's no reason to worry. And it's whoa, Danny. 8-4? Is that what you're talking about being a disappointing season? These guys have to almost recalibrate what to expect, because it's as much as everyone knows this is a difficult schedule. I just find it hard to believe that Florida Gator fans can see their team have a losing record for a third year in a row. And I guess it could be losing in terms of 6-6 and lose the bowl game like you did year 1. That's not nearly as bad as 5-7 missing a bowl game. But if they go 5-7 and miss a bowl game, I have a hard time believing that the University of Florida is not going to fire their head football coach after 3 straight losing seasons. But like you said, 4.5, I think with so many of these games on the schedule, it's not going to be easy, but they're going to beat somebody, and 4.5 just feels too low. So 5 seems like I'm going over on Florida, but 5 doesn't save his job by any means.
Interesting. Okay. Final one here, Matt Green. We don't spend a lot of time on this one. And I also know you're going to hate this line. A solid 3 for Vanderbilt, not a half. We're just doing 3 for the Vanderbilt.
It's a garbage line.
What say you about the Vanderbilt Commodores, Matt Green?
They knew exactly what they were doing when they set this line, because they looked at Vanderbilt's schedule and they were like, okay, Alcorn State, Georgia State, Ball State. There's the 3 right there. You going to have the balls to pick Vanderbilt to beat anyone else? I don't know. I don't think I do. They got obviously Virginia Tech out of conference in the season opener. Don't have to play Georgia this year, but this team, this schedule is just so loaded. I'm not gonna say under. I don't know. I guess Georgia State can beat them or something. They do go to Atlanta to play Georgia State, so I don't know. I guess if they lose to Georgia State, they're gonna go under. But I'm sure this feels 3-9. I'm going right on the money. Can I do that? Can I go right on the money?
You can.
Yeah, I think this is
no. Actually, no. You're not. I'm not doing this. You can't. You either got to go under or over. We got to have a tiebreaker here, so you got to go under or over.
Okay.
You're gonna go under.
Yeah. If I'm gonna think 2 wins or 4 wins, I think this is more likely a 2-win team. Give me Vanderbilt. Give me the under.
I'm going over.
Oh.
I think they get those 3. It took a while, but Clark Lee finally was like, all right, we gotta shake things up here a little bit offensively. Let's go do the Western Kentucky thing where we just hire an offensive staff that we like. Let's just go ahead and bring all those guys in and bring those players in. So you bring in Diego Pavia, who went to Auburn and won in Jordan Hare last year with New Mexico State. Jerry Kill and Tim Beck come in. I think it's good for one spoiler game. I think Vanderbilt steals 1. I'm not saying Vanderbilt's going bowling. They're not going bowling. But I do think Vanderbilt is going to be a lot spicier on offense. I think.
Who is it? You got to pick it. And I know which game you're going to pick, but you have to pick it.
I got to pick the game?
Who's the one? Yeah, who's the one?
I'm going to say the one is South Carolina at home.
I knew it. I knew the biggest Gamecock hater of them all. I knew it.
I think they get South Carolina at home with Diego Pavia. Is it Pavia? Pavia. But look, I think their offense is going to be better. But like they lost all 3 of their biggest receivers from a year ago. Jaden McGowan is at Boston College. Will Shepard's at Colorado. And London Humphreys is with your Georgia Bulldogs. Like, that's just brutal. There were some wild stats I saw. I think it was the Athlon Sports preview for the Commodores. They have no winning seasons in the last 10 years. They only have 3 winning seasons since 1982. Vanderbilt's also lost every SEC game last season by double digits. Every single one. It's just crazy. Like, James Franklin deserves a statue, I think, is what we've learned.
The Georgia one was actually kind of close, too.
Franklin deserves a statue, I think, potentially, based on what he was able to
absolutely
win at Vanderbilt. Because, I mean, it's unbelievable. The longer we get away from that brief era in Nashville, it's like, I don't know. I think the offense will be a little bit better. I think it'll be a little bit spicier. Give me one upset SEC win for the Commodores this year, and they sweep their non-conference. So give me 4-8 for Vanderbilt.
Yeah, that's bold right there, sir. If I look in recent history of the Vanderbilt Commodores, but they got 2 conference wins back in 2022. 3 of the last 4 years been winless in the conference. So we'll see. We'll see if they can get back to that 2018, that golden era. Derek Mason, 6-7, 3-5 in the conference. Actually went to
who was quarterback that year?
Your guess is as good as mine, sir. Unless my Kyle Shermer.
Kyle Shermer,
24-6
yes,
on the year.
Big dude, couldn't move.
He on a roster right now?
No, I don't think so.
He was on an NFL roster for a year or so, wasn't he?
He is. He's the offensive quality control coach for the Buffalo Bills.
There you go.
Yeah, he's already coaching.
Get that Nepo hire. I see you, Kyle. I'd do it if I could.
Wow. Kyle Shermer.
We all know what it is. You gotta do what you gotta do. Pat Shermer, you gotta play the card you're dealt.
Yeah. All right, well, that's all I've got, Matt Green. Anything else you want to throw out here before we do the West on Wednesday night?
That's all I got, sir. The West plus Texas. I guess that's how we're doing it. But I just want you to know the divisions are gone. They're not coming back, sir. They're not coming back. You're just gonna have to move on. It's 2024 now.
I won't do it. Matt Green, always a pleasure, and I will talk to you very soon.
Yes, sir.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.